All right, everybody, if you would, y'all please try to take your seats and we'll get started with the final activity of the day, our grower expert panel. So we'll give everybody just about 2 more seconds to try to make their way in here from the Grand Hall and we'll get started. I know it's the last session of the day and everybody's looking forward to dinner and the social at the football stadium, so we're going to get there pretty quickly. But I do not want to overlook this panel. As a quick introduction, so my name is Madison Dixon. I'm the Associate Director of the Agricultural Autonomy Institute at Mississippi State University, and we are very glad to have you all here with us today. That goes for both attendees as well as for our expert grower panelists, and so we are very fortunate to have them here with us today. Just to set the table a little bit here, I'd like to say that we've talked about a lot of really impressive technologies in agriculture over the course of the last 2 days. But as researchers, speaking personally, I know that I'm prone to lose the forest for the trees, as the expression goes, which is to get so deep into the weeds of something that you lose sight of why it's important in the first place. And so we have these grower experts with us today to help us remember exactly where this all, the rubber meets the dirt, so to speak, and to make sure that we do not lose sight of the technologies that we're working on, but how they have a real world, hopefully positive impact at the individual grower level. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to our panel and ask you all, if you would, please pop on your microphone. And if you would, we'll start with you, Jeremy, if you don't mind, and then we'll work our way this way. Would you just please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your operation, please?
Thank you, Madison. My name is Jeremy Jack. I farm in the Mississippi Delta in a town named Belzona. We farm cotton, corn, soybeans, and rice. I farm with my sister and my wife. We have a really good crew that works with us, a good team that we've been able to build out over the years. My parents moved to the Mississippi Delta from Ontario, Canada, back in the late 70s, early 80s. So I guess you could say I'm a second-generation Mississippi farmer. Technology's always been something at the heart of our operation, whether it was my father or my grandfather. They were always very forward-thinking for their time. And one of the reasons they moved to Mississippi Delta was the opportunities that arise in an area of agriculture like that. We have ownership in a aerial application business, a cotton gin, and we have a trucking business that goes along with the farm. And I'm just glad to be here with y'all today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marie Magruder. I am from Sawyerville, Alabama. That is the Black Belt of Alabama. And I am a relatively new farmer. I've been farming now for 3 years. I moved to Alabama to purchase my family's ancestral land that's been in our family since 1867. So we're sitting on about 160 acres that I acquired from my family. We are a specialty crop producer. We grow lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers. I also have my license to grow hemp. And then another business that I represent is IM Farms. We are licensed pharmaceutical grade medical marijuana facility. It's a 15,000 square foot facility, and as farmers, we just cultivate the flower for the state of Alabama. It goes through processing. Those are certified licensed processors who then make products for dispensaries, and that's where patients actually get their medicine that is prescribed. So that's who I am.
I'm Heather Hampton Nodal. I farm in Illinois, and with my 3 sons, and we farm corn, soybeans, winter wheat. We have some Black Angus cattle, and still raising a daughter in addition to that. One part of my background that's related to connectivity and precision ag, we've been using precision ag on our farm since the 90s. And in terms of regenerative agriculture, we've been no-tilling for at least 3 decades, pretty much, and worked with cover crops. The winter wheat itself serves as a cover crop for a lot of what we do. We do a lot of our own on-farm conservation work, but we also have multiple landowners. So these realities of we may see the right thing to do, but we can't always come up with that investment. The landowner has to meet you, right, halfway, especially if you don't have control over that asset. Another key learning from our standpoint is having a farm team where you have multiple operators. It's never just one person who's taking care of everything. You have to have many people who are cross-trained. I have an app on my phone. I was going to bring it on the stage, but I already know that our lead truck driver has exceeded the speed limit at least 2 times today. But she has an exemplary safety record, was actually the outstanding Midwest truck driver a couple years ago. So I'm not going to complain on that as long as grain gets hauled. But part of my background that might be somewhat unique was I've been working on bringing better connectivity to rural areas. Gosh, since I started my own business in 1996. And if anybody can name this sound, yeah, you've heard it, 56K, wow, that was lightning speed. So worked on several initiatives to bring some first-of-its-kind fixed wireless with a state-funded fiber backhaul back in the day, first-of-its-kind fiber to the premises, private investment throughout our county, first-of-its-kind distance learning telemedicine effort working with 4 school districts with approval from our state Department of Public Health and state Board of Education. So kind of been out there on the bleeding edge, but I'm glad to be here today where I am cut-free. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Jack Herkamp. I come from just south of here. Macon is about 30, 40 minutes south. I'm going to have to fess up since Jeremy said he came from Canada. Technically, I was born in Ohio. I was 6 years old when my dad moved to Mississippi, and I'm grateful that he did. I love it. I love it in the South myself. He hated the cold, and I hate it too, so he did a good job coming south. Anyway, so I'm kind of a medium-sized farmer, raised corn and cotton, and we still have what I think my son has 25 acres of catfish. So I farm with my son, Brandon. I was moved to Mississippi in 1963, so we've been here for a long time. We've been conventional farmers for years and years and years and years. The last 15, 20 years, I've been slowly integrating and changing what I do, and I really want to get out of being a dirt farmer. A dirt farmer is somebody where you see the dirt all the time. The only time you don't see it is when you have a green crop growing on, and you have to walk out there and look down to see the dirt. I don't want to see my dirt ever, whether it's cover crop, whether it's crop growing on it, keep enough crop residue on top of it so that the dirt's never exposed. So lately here the past 2 or 3 years, and especially this past year, I've gone in working into my biomass, which is the bacteria and the fungi in my soil, and building that up. So that's where my heart is now. I'm not worried about getting bigger or doing anything. My son is on board with what I'm doing. He likes it. I'm kind of the instrument that's going and making it happen. But he's right there with me doing it, and he loves it also. So that's my main joy right now is building that. And wherever I can get autonomous to help it, make my life better, or AI to find something to do to make that better, then we're on board. We're ready to go with it. Thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you all very much for the introductions, and that helps really set the stage for additional conversation through the panel. And we're going to set the stage a little bit more with this next question, which is really just going to give us some background context. But Jack, I'll start with you, and we'll work our way back down the line again. Question is, how have you seen agricultural technology change over your time as a grower?
All right, so this is my little trick here. So I've been around here for a long time, So 63, so when we moved south, our cotton was hand-picked in 64 and 65. So that goes back to the technology where there was none, just hand-picking, to what I have through the module builder. If you knew cotton, you know that the module builder was a big technological improvement where you could handle cotton. And now I have this beautiful CP770 cotton picker that you drive through the field, it builds a module, it wraps it, it handles the cotton. It's something that will pick literally what it took 1,500 people to do in one day. I do with that picker. So I've seen huge technology change from riding a 40-20 that I started with a planter that was nothing but putting seed into dirt until a planter that I have now that is, I have 4 screens sitting on my tractor that I look at, and it's just so many adjustments and so much technology in it that it's amazing what I can do. Of course, I can't take the planter that I planted with in 1972 and 73 and plant what I plant now. I don't see my dirt much. I'm looking at my cover crops, whether it's green or whether it's been burnt down, as we call it, or terminated a little sooner and it's brown. It takes the planter that I have now. I can't do it without the technology that I have now. It's impossible to farm the way I do it. So it's a fantastic thing. So I've seen a huge amount of technology change in my lifetime. It's huge.
Same question, Heather.
All right, so I used to walk so many beans, I'd shut my eyes at night and just see rows of beans, right? And they gave me a weed hook, found out I was not mechanical enough to handle that safely, so I ended up with gloves. And then started using a spray bottle with Roundup to kill weeds in the field, and then we moved to a boom on the front of a tractor, and we could run it with a sprayer, so there'd be 4 of us going down the row while the tractor drove. Whereas today, I think the largest, most significant change in agriculture in my lifetime has been in genetics. So it's about agronomy, and it's about those investments in R&D and the ability for us to manage risk, manage weeds, manage things more efficiently, and to have resilient cropping. And that's also an area where I see AI playing a huge role already.
Yeah.
And for potential moving forward. Definitely mechanically, just the advent of satellite-driven anything is substantial. And communications, the fact that we can make decisions and analyze and direct traffic just from the palm of our hand is huge. Think back to my very first not cell phone, but had a little keyboard that slid out, and that was cool. I could keep my calendar on it. But now when you think about the compute capacity in our hands, that's something else.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't really know much about the past because I'm a new farmer.
All right.
But, but I can speak to a lot of the technology that we're using today, and primarily in our medical marijuana facility, because it is all AI driven. We use a system called Rhythm. For example, we have 9 flower rooms. Each one is its own climate system. That system handles everything from environment to the feeding of our plants, to like our CO2 and temperature, climate, humidity. All of each one of those rooms is independently managed and has its own ecosystem. We are obviously collecting data as well, so that as we are growing different strands, we can dial in on just with that sort of group of that inventory of flower, what's needed to have a really healthy environment for that system, and we can also make adjustments. So AI is not only helping us to manage, but also to collect that data, turn into information, so that we can better be informed on how to improve our grow techniques. But I will say this, and something that is mentioned throughout this conference, is that it still takes human intervention. While we're not touching the plants as much as we would if we didn't have those systems, obviously inspection and looking, manually inspecting those plants is something that can only be done by human at this stage.
So when I always think of my dad's story that he tells me when he thinks about when he thinks about how technology has changed in someone's life. And he tells me the story of his uncle was living in Canada. When his uncle was a little kid, they'd go outside their house, and natives would be going across the Canadian prairie on a horse with a teepee, traveling across the country. And when he got older, he saw the Concorde jet land on that same piece of property because it was a Calgary, Alberta airport. He's like, transportation changed a little bit in my lifetime. So I don't know what's going to happen in yours, but that's how it went in my lifetime. And, I think about the story because it's springtime, it's planting, and especially when we get talking about growing wheat. When I was, my mother, who was grew up on a farm herself, and when she was pregnant with me, it was in November, they were planting wheat, and she pulled out to the farm with a truck and a trailer and had bags of wheat on it, and she started to unload it, and one of the guys on the team stopped my dad's like, I don't mean any disrespect, but we're not having babies out here today. Get her out of here. She does not need to be picking up bags of wheat. And a week later, I was born. So she was very far along the way. And I think about that, technology you had a box grain drill, you had a tractor that didn't have a single monitor, a single digital, everything was analog across on that piece of equipment. And 8 years ago, about 2 weeks in mid-March, my daughter was born. Well, that's corn planting season for us. And she was born on a Sunday morning, and on a Monday morning, we went to the field planting. Now, I'm still happily married, and my daughter still likes me. So, but I still remember sitting in the hospital room. I had my newborn baby in one arm and my iPad in my other hand, watching the planters go across the field, sending prescriptions, checking, seed spacing, and just making sure everything was going correctly. I was able to run the operation without having to leave at a certain point in time. So I think about, there was no way my dad would have ever been able to do that. Either the crop wouldn't have been able to get planted, or he wouldn't have been able to stay in the hospital, one of the two. I was able to do both through technology, and that's just in my lifetime how that changed rapidly.
Excellent. So we're going to build on that question a little bit. We've talked a bit about how you've seen that technology change over your years as a grower. And so next question, and we'll just keep following this format. We'll go up and down the line. But Jeremy, so what technology do you leverage the most often? That could be something as simple as a cell phone or iPad, or something more complex than that. But what technology or technologies do you find yourself, utilizing the most frequently and having the biggest impact and benefit for your operation?
Mine would either be my cell phone or my iPad. I kind of use it. If I don't have one, I have the other with me. If you're ever in the truck with me, my iPad sits on a mount right there with me, and I put 50,000 miles a year on a truck and probably don't go over 30 minutes round circle there. So I live in the truck a good bit. And the reason I use the iPad or the cell phone as much is the connectivity, and I'm able to monitor everything on our operation, whether if we're drying corn, if we're drying rice, if we are planting, harvesting, if we have trucks running up and down the road, if we've got something going in the shop, something at the warehouse. I can monitor everything on our operation anywhere in the world, as long as I have a Wi-Fi signal. And I would say each year it changes. It went from, a few years ago just monitoring. Now I'm able to actually make adjustments to equipment and adjustments to things without actually physically being there. And why that's good, I don't play golf, so it's not like I'm doing this on the golf course, but it allows me to be at two places at once. If we're wet today, but if we were not wet, we would be planting rice, soybeans, and corn, spraying rice, soybeans, and corn, fertilizing corn and rice at the same time. That's a lot going on, and I would say most of the time when we're in the fields, which is usually from March to about November, we have multiple things going on at the same time, and most of my job at that point in time is just an air traffic controller, making sure everybody's going in the right direction and making sure they need to be there. So it's hard for me. I grew up on the farm, and I could drive, in 10 minutes from one side of the farm on the other on a four-wheeler. I can't really do that today to the way the farm's laid out. We're not spread out we're all in one county basically. But the other thing is, there's opportunities for me to go to my son's baseball game or my daughter's soccer game, or there's a program at the school or at the church, or there's a conference at Mississippi State I want to go to. It allows me to have a life outside of just sitting on the farm. And it's not that I have a control issue that I have to be there all the time, but I'm able to see so many things and work with the other parts of the team to make sure that this person knows what this person's doing. So we're able to have great communication across the team as long as everybody knows what we're doing, and we're able to execute efficiently because of that.
So, really don't have much to add to that in terms of technology, because yes, between my iPhone and my Mac, I'm able to jump between businesses, whether it be looking at the cameras in our facility or setting the irrigation on my farm itself. I will say the biggest technology to me is the automation of my irrigation system, because in Alabama, with the drought and all of different, rain conditions, being able to control the water on the farm has been a real game changer for me. So.
Well, definitely the cell phone is the most frequently used if you look at my texting and data usage numbers. Desktop, but in terms of applications, we're using remote bin sensing, so an OPI system, and definitely the ops center where we can see all of our equipment, just what Jeremy described, and the idea of knowing what's going on and what that machine usage is, what kind of return. And my brother is really into those data. He farms separate farm, but he's all about, well, you can, reduce your torque and run your RPMs here, and you're going to get this much more fuel efficiency. And but he's a gearhead. Okay, he was a diesel mech guy, which is great, but I was not. So I'd say those are some of the top things. That which makes the most difference to profitability. So the why behind all this is we have to be able to come back the next year and do it again. So profitability, not a dirty word. It is a necessary word. And it's extremely challenging right now. But what makes us the most profitable would definitely be those precision technologies that allow us, like we've actually built our own on-farm trials, so we'll do like checkered board type trials with data-intensive farm management in that program that's been set up through some partnerships, and that's been great to be able to look at seeding populations, nitrogen trials. We actually ran our own kind of fungicide trial with aerial application. One of my sons has a drone-based aerial application business. So just to give you an idea of some of the technologies that we're using, they all add up to make a difference, but it has to show some form of return on investment. It's not just a cool toy.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jack. What kind of technologies are you using the most?
So, I'm going to have to agree with Jeremy and such about the cell phone has become a key ingredient to my farm. Now, they farm larger than I do, and they have a lot of operators. I farm small, and it's just what I like. It's my choice. If you want to farm big, go for it. I want you to, because that's what you want to do. I want a farm smaller where I'm the one on the tractor and I'm the one operating. But that also allows me to sit there when I'm driving the tractor, the same as Jeremy said, and I can look at what's going on. I can control irrigation systems. We can start, we can stop. I can look at, we have catfish. I can look at the monitors on the pond during the summer with the probes in the cornfield looking at moisture levels. I can look at them, and it's a huge time saver to do all those things. And we still have to go back to, I love it, but the biggest technology, and this is what I began with, is the technology on my planter, because I cannot farm the way I do if I don't have a planter that will plant into the cover crops the way I plant into it. So it's the technology that's been developed about the down pressure, which pushes the planter into the ground. I have to have that, and that's individual row technology. So each row measures how much it has to have, and in milliseconds it reacts to it, and it pushes the seed down into the ground. And I'm sure y'all run exactly that technology. That the trash managers on the front, which kind of move things out of the way a little bit, the closing system that pushes, puts the dirt back over the seed. I have to have all that, because if my planter fails, my crop fails. Yep. It's got to be the whole thing. So, there's some technology on pickers that's fantastic that's developed now on my combine, on my tractors, but it all comes down to when that planter makes that pass through the field, that's where I'm successful or not successful. I've got to have a stand and a even perfect growing stand from the very beginning. And, that does spread to everybody else. That's the same thing on it. It's really critical for me, because I push the envelope to the very limit. I pushed it past the limit to find out how far you can go, and then you back up a little bit. But we do that a little bit at a time, like 5 acres, nothing that's going to hurt you.
Yes, sir.
But that's my perspective.
Absolutely. So love the specific examples that were provided there, but I also picked up on a pattern across the board. And I'm a big believer in patterns, just mainly because I'm a big fisherman. And so if you go fishing and you catch fish on one particular bait, that's luck. And if you catch 2 fish off of that same bait, then that's a positive indication. And if you catch 3 fish off that bait, then you've established a pattern, and that's the bait you need to fish with for the rest of the day, right? But as a researcher, when we notice a pattern among growers and end users of this technology, then we ought to apply that same mindset to our research. So let's take note of the pattern that all 4 of you have agreed the most frequently used technology is probably going to end up being that cell phone or the iPad. And therefore, as researchers, we should make sure that our efforts ultimately are in some way making their way into an accessible, digestible medium that can get growers the information they need when they need it as timely as possible. So I like to take note of patterns whenever I recognize them. So that was a good one to note there, I think.
Yeah, Madison, you got to have an app for the AI so we can get to it.
There we go.
That's it.
We'll get to work on it, Jack. And I'm glad you bring up AI. So that at this point, I think we've got the table sufficiently set. And now we'll start to pivot a bit more towards AI-related technology. So next question, and Jack, we'll start with you and work our way down, but are you currently using any AI or autonomous type technologies on your operation? And if so, then great, and tell us a little bit about it. And if not, then no worries, and tell us what, maybe some obstacles are that are you're still trying to think through before you start adopting AI or autonomous technologies.
Yeah, I can't say I'm using any AI technology really that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against it. I'm in that older age group, and they say, well, older folks don't take it on very well. Well, when I give my 1.5-year-old granddaughter my phone and she can use it better than I can, that's the wave of the future. I'm slower adapting to it, But the AI, I can't say, but autonomy, like let's say my planter is full of autonomy. I've got other things. There's sprayers full of autonomy. My combine, my picker, there's autonomy in those. My tractor's full of it. It's starting with the RTK with the GPS system for steering and knowing where you are and mapping everything. And then, once you've done all that, then you can go back to the John Deere Op Center, see what you've done and study what you did, for the winter time.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Same question, Heather. So are you using any AI or autonomous technologies currently?
Short answer, I think AI, indirectly, we're using a ton of it. So, for example, people we buy from are using, high throughput phenotyping, AI, right? And we need that on the farm. Is that something I'm going to be able to use directly? No, not yet. Would I like, I can give you a wish list of what I'd like AI to help me do, and it is not find the best pizza, okay? I would like AI to help me with more complex decision making, like let's generate some charts of market averages over time. And I can look at those charts myself, and I can try to look at lines of retracement and get some patterns here to determine my best selling options, right? But help me kind of accelerate that decision making process whenever a USDA report comes out. In the first 5 minutes, you have the opportunity to make potentially a quarter of your year's profit. Okay, I need to make that decision quickly. And I may know a lot of information going into it, but I think this on-farm decision making and analysis is key. And another AI piece, which I think the technology's here, we haven't yet adopted it on our farm, would be the idea of crop scouting. And how can we then apply that to do targeted spraying with the aerial application or the high cycle sprayer, whatever, we've got options. But even waiting a day, okay, my cousin's a soybean geneticist, and in some of his research, he identified an alfalfa field by accident. They were studying this, but one day they identified a fungus in it. By 24 hours later, 60% of that field was infected. So the idea that we're going to have to wait 24 hours for terabits of data from a 160-acre field to get processed to tell us where to spray, it's not good enough. And we're not ready to invest in that yet. And there's not enough edge compute to be able to help us lift that yet. So I think this connectivity discussion, and it was Tell you what was super cool. I walked in there, and I think it was Brian from Oklahoma, maybe, referencing the FCC Precision Ag Task Force. I chaired that working group that had the recommendations that he cited. So that was kind of cool. I'm like, I'm familiar with this, what he's talking about right here. So AI. Yes, I've got some sons who want to try to use it to create tank mixes for burn down, and I'm like, whoa, boys. Okay, we still know an agronomist we want to talk to first, and don't just jump into that and think ChatGPT is going to give that to you. So trying to train them, even though they're young and they're anxious to use things, they may not have the judgment or the wisdom yet to realize where they need some real experts to help ground truth things and get the best answers. So, I saw on another slide, junk in, junk out. True with everything, right? So those are a few things that come top of mind.
Absolutely.
Well, I already mentioned about the way we use AI in our medical facility, but on my farm, being that I am a cash crop grower, we have about 18 different types of crops. I had a soil sample done on my farm. I actually put that soil sample into ChatGPT, and it came up with a very specific recommendation for the 15 different fields that we had tested to know what amendments we need to put in place. We also have sheep and goats, so getting the right mixture of grass to grow. I did use ChatGPT for that, but what I'll say about that is this. Well, first of all, I am a CFO, so I'm a for-profit businesswoman. So even in running my farm, I'm always thinking about the cost of inputs as well as the return on investment, as you mentioned. But what I know is there are farmers who traditionally do things, and they're experts in the industry. So whenever I get my results from technology or AI, I always tend to run it by someone in the industry. Like for the grass mix, it had a great recommendation for grass mix, and I asked it specifically for the Black Belt of Alabama, but there were a couple of requests that it made that aren't really, they're not accessed in Alabama, so we obviously had to change those out for something else. So where I think AI and technology is a great idea, we also want to sort of inspect for what we expect and double check with other sources to make sure that we're not just sort of taking it without getting the learning and making whatever adjustments need to be made. And the last thing I'll say is learning how to companion plant. I put the list of all of my products, and this is what really I'm really thankful for is the USDA had a program where small farmers could sell to the food banks and to the schools as a part of the COVID initiative. And it has just been terminated through the USDA. So where I thought I was going to have a $400,000 revenue stream through those programs, I had to pivot. And I'm really glad I had to pivot because it really required me to dig deep. But when I asked to kind of modeled out what my revenue stream needed to be to kind of make that up with other sources, I did use ChatGPT, and not only did we come up with a really good plan, but also really ideas on what markets I needed to look into that have really started to yield results, as well as how to lay out my rows and to succession plant. So there's a lot of information through technology and through AI that's available. And it just really helps me to kind of get up on the curve really quick and to be able to pivot. And not that it is foolproof, but it really does help to sort of aggregate information and to come up with solutions. So.
You know, when I think of AI and automation, I feel like automation's kind of bled into AI in agriculture. You know, with our combines, they'll have machine learning on them to where they'll see the humidity's risen or the sun's gone underneath clouds and we need to change the concaves or change our fan speeds to make sure we're having a cleaner sample. And it's doing all that while the guy's on the phone, you know, where's the truck, where's the grain cart, we're about to get stuck. You know, there's so many decisions that need to be made every day. So when a machine can take some of the things that are constant, take constant thinking away from the operator, well, then that operator is going to be less tired by the end of the day and be able to enjoy the job a lot more and do a better job. So you look at even just like our down pressure on our planters, they automatically adjust. So there's numerous pieces of equipment that we have on the farm. Our dryers will speed themselves up, slow themselves down, change their temperature to make sure that our quality of our rice quality stays in the same parameters where we want it to be. And that's just going to build out more to where the information, instead of being instant going into the dryer, that maybe we're feeding the dryer system with the information that's coming off the combines, and it's utilizing information from past years on which variety of rice needs to be dried different ways. So we're just getting into a lot of what we can do with AI. But, talk about how we can use programs like ChatGPT, and it's simple things as I did the same thing. I dropped in 10 years of soil sample data across the whole farm and said, okay, let's look at some trends. What farms are we having which issues? What farms are we building? You can just ask these things. Now, you can do these yourself, but it's going to take so much longer to do it, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to speed you up and it's going to multiply. On the way up here today, I was listening to a podcast, and there's a guy that was talking about, he writes very short emails, and they can come across as being ugly or rude or mean. So he takes every email he writes, he puts it into the program and says, make this 10% nicer. And he's like, I don't want to get fired. I don't want to get an email from my boss, but I want it to be nice enough to where people don't feel that I'm being too cushy. And, it's something simple as that. That multiplies you, that speeds you up. I have dyslexia, so every email I write, I take it, copy it, and just make sure there's no grammatical errors into it, and I put it back in. Then all of a sudden, everyone thinks I'm smarter than I am. So it's simple things like that to very complex of looking at over 100,000 soil sample points with multiple attributes in there and asking very specific questions that's going to allow us to move quicker. And in agriculture, as we start putting all of our systems together from planting to harvest, and we always say on our farm, we're farming in 3 years at a time. So we're still doing last year's crop. We're just getting started in this year's crop, but we're making plans for next year's crop. So as we put all three of those crops together and can utilize the artificial intelligence to speed us up, we'll be able to move much faster in our operations.
Speaking of speed, so we're going to talk about timeline and dive a little bit deeper into those technologies, whether they're AI or autonomy or just related to those, but the ones that you referenced, let's dive a little bit deeper. So Jeremy, starting with you, how long did it take, what was the learning curve? How long was the learning curve, and how long did it take you to learn the latest technologies that you're using and successfully implement them in your operation?
So I was very fortunate. I grew up when technology started to come available. I was still the kid when you wanted the TV to change. I was the remote that had to run up there and change the TV. Mm-hmm. So I'm that old. But at the same time, so as I always tell people, and I was kind of showing my age, I was like, you don't know how hard this was when I was a kid growing up. I remember having laptops out in the field where you didn't have connectivity, and you're trying to use different types of, we didn't even have UBS sticks. We had to just do things. They were very, very challenging. So if you wanted technology in the late 90s and the early 2000s, you were dedicated because it didn't work. Yep. You lost money. It didn't matter how hard. You wanted to see it work was the only reason you did it. Now it's so easy to do anything. And I made, in the conversation out in the hallway, we were talking about variable rate seeding, and in probably 2 minutes with my iPad, I can send a variable rate seeding prescription to a planter in the field. He can accept it, load it, and take off planting. That was like a week's worth of hard work when I was in college. Yep. So how they're building the technology now, I guess is the point I'm getting to, is the connectivity is easier. The programs are so much more intuitive than they used to be. So it's not hard. It used to be, but it's really easy. It's what we're having a hard time is changing our mindset of this is the way we've always done it. And I will say that was one of the things that when I said my father and my grandfather were very innovative, they always wanted to find a better way of doing things. And now we have technology that's allowed us to move so much quicker with that. We just have to figure out what can the technology do for us. The technology is not smarter than we are. We have to train our mind to make the technology work for us to get the goals or achieve the goals that we're looking for.
And so would it be fair to say, Jeremy, as the technology has improved over that time period from, say, the 90s and early 2000s, as that technology has gotten better, do you feel like that learning curve has lessened a bit and it's more intuitive and easier to pick up?
Very, very much so. I feel like when all the technology that we have today, it's so easy that, you know, like I even said, I have little kids and they're able to pick up on things and even it's not just, you know, a phone or a Nintendo. They can get into a tractor that my daughter's, you know, she's never drove a tractor before, and she can get into a tractor and she can flip through all the screens because it's so easy to look and like, okay, that's what this means, that's what this means.
Yep.
And you can just walk someone through it. I think a lot of times it wasn't that easy in the past, but it is now. So if we can just train our minds to think like, this is not that hard, you're not going to tear it up.
Yep.
In the 90s you would, but you're not now. And once people get that comfort level, they can really roll through things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Marie, same question. I'm really interested in your thoughts about, because you've told us about the AI that's used in your climate control and the automation that's used in your irrigation, but how long did it take you to figure that stuff out and be able to use it successfully?
So I'm going to give you a little background. So my undergraduate degree is...
I think we've lost you. You might want to take that
My
one.
undergraduate degree is math and statistics. I started as an actuary, and then I have a master's in international finance and investments. So technology has always been, I mean, I started with Fortran, with the punch cards, you know, and DOS. And so I've continued to learn as technology has grown. I've always been engaged in it. And I'm 63 years old. So I've always been engaged in technology. So there's sort of this toolkit I think I have. So going from finance, business, and corporate America into farming is taking some of those same tools, configuring them and staying relevant, staying current, and staying engaged. Because now it's just sort of incremental learning. Because of it. So I love the fact that something that would have taken me 2 weeks to do now may take me 4 hours to do because I have an assistant. And then with the AI technology that's out, I think the biggest thing is while we are utilizing it, never letting our mind sort of just lean on it and not engaging our intellect and our brain and analyzing, because especially the way technology is today, when you're an expert in something, you identify where the technology or the AI may not get things exactly right. So as we are training it and it is working with us, I think that's the exciting part. So I am out there all the time, and I'll just say this as an example. I'm obsessive compulsive, so once I'm working with the technology, I want to know every, go down every path, whatever with it. So it's still exciting to me, and I think when we stay excited about it, we will really get the most out of it. So I would say not very long, but it's a commitment.
Absolutely.
And mine is on the need to know. So if I need something, I want to learn it now, and that's where things being accessible, I do like DALL-E, right, to create some graphics and images and things like that. That is just fun, right? Rather than me trying to do my own artwork and craft that up. I don't have that time, but I can at least go to that and make that happen. But it's ironic, I think, given the ages that we're at, it kind of plays to our advantage as a Gen Xer myself, right? That we came from there was one computer in the house and sometimes it would work, but you never really used it. It was more of an oddity, right? Like, oh, look at that huge paperweight, to this point where it's cell phones. I've actually had to be the one to show my 22-year-old how to download prescriptions from the ops center, or when that didn't work because you didn't have connectivity, how we take the USB drive and we plug it in. Because he was so impatient, like, why can't I just make it work? And there I am actually being the tech resource. It's ironic, is it not? And same thing with my 15-year-old, the daughter. on various just computer applications and understanding the how you get to someplace. It's not always just push a button and make it so, number one. You actually have to have a little bit of forethought about what your desired outcome is and how you want to get there. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I think these two answers, it's pretty much like ditto. It's good stuff,
Yep.
but we still have to have. I like the concept of upskilling operators, yet I don't know yet how that plays out, since each operator begins at a different skill level to begin with, an aptitude level. Just how far we can go with that. Like, we have one employee, super nice guy, great heart, and you'll stand there and you give him instructions, he'll nod like this, and I said, now, do you understand what I just said? No. All right, every time. And you'll send him a text just to remind him, just to do it, right? But I don't know how far we can go with that, because the cattle still get out of the fence, and we still have problems, and I still have a wish list item on AI, so I don't know if now's the time or if we should come back to that.
If we can come back, then we certainly will.
Gen X, huh? Yeah. I'm definitely a baby boomer.
Yeah,
I think, Marie, are you in the, you're about that last year of it, aren't you? Yeah. Anyway, so we have a harder time, Marie may not, I have a harder time working on all this technology. But to begin with, we didn't take on the technology right away. Some, I couldn't afford it at the time. And it wasn't what we have now either, though. You weren't gaining as much to get it, because you weren't doing the same thing. What I'm doing now, I'm trying to finish setting up, being able to look at two things and get both of them mapped on my planter tractor, where I'm putting nitrogen down behind the planter and I'm putting something in furrow at the same time, and I want both of those mapped. I've had it where only one of them was, but I want both of them. And it's something that I can work through now that I used to not be able to. It's gotten easier, but I think my mind has also gotten a little more in tune with it, that I can do it like I used to not be able to. If I really get in trouble, I really have to bring my son in and let him do it,
Yes, sir.
And if it really gets any worse, then that 5-year-old's going to have to come do it for me. But it's so true, that this young kids, it's natural to them because they always do it. From this 18-month-old child, and she flips through my phone now already. It's like I'm amazed. But that comfort with it and not afraid they're going to tear it up is going to, that works to being all the way through it. Where I'm afraid I'm going to tear it up. That's part of my problem. But it has both. I'm getting better, and the formats are so much easier to work with now than they used to be.
Yes, sir.
Lots and lots easier.
Absolutely. So going back to that wish list item, so we have a video. Heather, I think now would be a perfect time to pull it up, and we'll play that. It's just a couple of minutes, and if you want to give us some narrative over the I know that I've got to get the sound to play as well, but if there's anything you'd like to add.
There's nothing fancy about it. What you're going to see here is my third son a couple years ago.
What we are doing here is we're expecting seed meter wear, and seed meters are what controls your population of seeds and how many seeds goes into the ground at one time. So what we're doing here is we're looking to see if there's any wear, especially right here in these grooves. These pick up the seed inside the meter, it rotates, picks up the seed and holds it in these good things. You need to make sure there's no or wear on these so it gets a firm, good grasp. And other things we look for is like seals right here and right here. And this, you want to look for bearing looseness so this thing doesn't wobble, and you want a certain length over 17.5 millimeters right here, 8 millimeters there. We've got our measuring tool down there. Can't do that right now. Then you want to look at seed placement right here. And then for beans, you don't really need to check this because it doesn't have any grooves in it. But for corn, if you were running corn, you need a strip with grooves in it to get a grasp on the corn. This just cleans this off because you've got seed treatment coming through and it builds up everywhere, and you want this to brush all that off. And you just want everything to make sure that it's not got enough wear to affect the productivity of your machine.
How many rows are you doing?
So I'm doing 31 rows, which is how many are on this here planter, 1795. But if I was just doing corn, I'd do them all anyways, but for corn you only use 16 because spacing, yeah.
What do you mean spacing? How wide are your rows?
So with your
It's a second son walking behind you.
corn, you're
Cue the
gonna be
son.
running 30-inch rows, so that'd just be, in total it's a 40-foot machine or implement. And so you divide that by your 16 rows, and that gives you 30 inches a piece in between each row. And when you put those wings down, you get 31 rows, and then it divides it in two, everything. So now you've got 15-inch spacing with your beans.
Right. So that's the one who built his first computer when he was like 11 or 12, and then started mining crypto without me knowing about it. Okay? That's that guy. He's the one who has the aerial application business now. But why I thought that might be worthwhile is that, you know, we've got a mix of computer scientists here in the room who may not be familiar with agriculture, or we have people who are familiar with maybe managing agriculture or working on one specialized end of it. But to see that at the farm level, we can have all the tech we want in our hands, but if the machinery itself does not work and we don't have people who know how to make it work, you're not going anywhere. You're not pulling out in the field. And one of the more frustrating things, we had a tractor, for an example, had a bad sensor on it. And that's where I think Jack maybe a difference in technology is you used to be able to fix everything, okay? And now it's not just about right to repair, it's more about you just can't fix it because we don't have all the wiring harnesses and all these little cheapo electric nodes that they've tried to reduce the cost on. You get a $500,000 tractor sitting there and 20-cent nodes. We need to do better. But we ran into an issue where now our US EPA had required DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, to try to reduce emissions. Well, here's the irony. You use the DEF to try to reduce the emissions, but the machines themselves are actually much less efficient, so they're burning more fuel overall. We have not succeeded in solving a problem. And in the meantime, then we have things like a sensor, even though we had just filled the DEF, like topped it off. The satellite is saying, you don't have enough DEF because the sensor was bad. We could not even turn on the tractor. There's no manual override, and it was time to plant, right? So that's the kind of realities we find ourselves in. We're like, it's great. Technology's great. But again, it's about it all working at the same time. And one thing that's on my wish list, I kind of said jokingly, cattle still get out of the fences. So we have a cow-calf operation. And something about Hampton Angus, they are just smart, wily cows, okay? And I truly think, I was in a meeting sometime in the last year, and they were showing these robotic dogs that were out there like herding cattle, right? But they were also supposed to be gathering health data on a cow. And I'm thinking, well, number one, you really need to talk to an animal scientist here, because you put a dog out with a cow, their physiology, they're just going to rapid heart rate, wide eyes, agitation, not the best time to take their vitals. So let's rethink that. And people kind of thought I was joking, but I'm not. I think we need a robotic bunny that can go around the pasture. I mean, think how cute that would be too, am I right? Mm-hmm. Who wants to design a robotic bunny? Raise your hand, yes. Mm-hmm. But also not only take the cattle measurements and tell me what's going on in terms of lactation, health, dry nose, wet nose, phlegm, mucus, limp. Do I got corkscrew hoof? It's really a thing. Mm-hmm. Who knew? But also look at forage quality as it goes and tell me where are we lacking. So, pulling even little tiny soil samples or whatever. I mean, this has real world relevance in a non-threatening way that could be collecting a lot of useful data. Whenever we need to be spending our time, since there are fewer of us, making decisions, strategic decisions, and doing the things that move the needle toward profitability.
Absolutely. And Heather, we appreciate the behind-the-scenes look into Your operation, no, it was great, and commend you for doing that. So at the Dixon family farm in the Mississippi Delta, we wouldn't have been able to film such a video, because if we were disassembling that planter, inevitably that air wrench would have run into a bolt that wouldn't break, and that would have been very quickly followed by some probably offensive language, and wouldn't have been able to show that in a setting like this.
Yeah, we have like a cussing jar at home. No, so you got to see all three sons there kind of in action. You got to see a little bit of that dynamic. You know, middle son is the one who says the least but gets the most reaction all the time.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got just less than 30 minutes left for the panel, and so what I'd like to do now is let's take a step back, think big picture, and think towards the future, right? Jeremy, you made a really good point earlier about autonomy and AI kind of bleeding over into one another as it relates to agriculture, so I'm going to come back and start with you, and this is a two-part question for each of you, and we'll try to make a distinction between those two things, between AI and between autonomy. So, Jeremy, the two-part question is, number one, what farming challenges would you most like for AI to solve? So farming challenges and that you'd like AI to solve, and what farming tasks would you most like to automate if you had the ability to?
It's easy. It's the same one. It's the job no one wants to do. I think that's the thing, is everyone always hear that, oh, AI is going to take jobs and automation is going to take jobs. They're taking the jobs that nobody wants. You know, maybe there is, but no one. I've never seen an autonomous bartender at a beach.
Yep. Right.
So you know, it's. You know, and we think about it like we just put a new rice drying facility in, and we have a corn drying facility, and it's, you know, when we're hauling grain in the harvest, it's hot, it's dusty, and nobody wants to open and close the door on the truck. It's a long day. Either the truck driver has to get out of the truck every time and open and close both the doors to dump them, and which runs into fall risk and different things like that because they're up on the pit. So we usually have someone sitting there all day long in the heat, in the humidity, in the rice dust, opening the door and then close it, and opening the other door and close it, and then we'll dump 2 trucks at a time, so it's just going back and forth and open and closing trucks. There's no reason that the truck pulls up there, stops, the doors automatically open, the machine, they're connected to the motors that run the loop system that take the grain to the grain bins, and it knows when it's got too much of a load on there, it slowly closes the gates, and then when it's got too much, doesn't have enough load on there, it opens the gates up, it analyzes how much grain's in the truck. Once the truck's empty, it closes them up, and the truck drives off. So that's, you know, it's a simple step. It's something simple, like open and closing doors, whoop-de-doo. Mm-hmm. But it's something that nobody wants to do. So we could all do that, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you do is, who wants to drive a truck in a dusty field back and forth, you know, for 12, 14, 16 hours a day when we're on corn harvest, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning, you're still out there in the same dust. Let's have the truck just drive itself back and forth every time. And then you're just looking at us like, well, those are taking jobs. Those are the jobs that the guys hate the most. They really is like, or one person is in charge of 4 trucks. Well, guess what? That person has a better job. He can operate 4 pieces of equipment at a time. Now all of a sudden he's higher paid, he has a better career. He might be sitting in an office somewhere watching, monitoring all these vehicles, making sure they're going to the right spot, being dropped off. So I look at automation and AI working together with a person, giving them a better career path, giving them a better job satisfaction, and making us more productive. So they all kind of fit in between with each other. And that's a simple step. I can sit up all night long and think of, or when we're ever in the fields going, I look at what one of the innovative things that we do on our farm is we always look at what's the pinch point, what didn't work right. Let's solve that, and then let's go to the next one. And I think every time over the years that we've changed something like that, where automation or AI could have solved those problems, made everybody's life so much easier and made the process so much more efficient. And we can, you know, as a farmer, we really have a passion for what we do. There's no doubt about it. We get to grow things. I mean, there's nothing more. You get to plant it and watch it grow. It's like having kids every year, a whole lifetime. every year. And when you quit farming, what do? You still talk about farming. I talked about that every day. What do you got this done? You got this done. When are you going to plant? When are you get this sprayed? I mean, it's in your blood. But at the same time, we're making widgets. We're taking an input and we're trying to make an output. And we're trying to make as much output off the inputs we put in there. And we have to be as efficient as possible to grow as much as we possibly can. And AI and automation is going to make that so much more enjoyable and so much more productive and efficient.
Absolutely. So same question, Marie. 2 parts. What farming challenges would you most like for AI to attempt to solve, and what tasks would you most like to automate if you could?
So I'm going to speak to my produce farm, and what we all don't like to do is get out there and weed. So weed and pest management are the 2 areas where I think AI will make a major difference in the quality of our produce. And then because I just have buildings and we're now putting in equipment, obviously the post-harvest process for wash pack and just the uniformity and able to do that. And it's not to say that technology isn't out here, but that's really what I'm looking into now. As we're building that out, what's available now and what we like to see to kind of reduce the labor cost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it was actually C.S. Lewis who coined the phrase, basically, we're limited by our imaginations, pretty much. But he did a much more articulate way of saying it. It's worth reading if you can find it. I like both these answers, and Jeremy's in particular. The jobs people don't want to do, clean out grain bins. Okay? Maybe you have guys who jump at that. They just want to work out. Forget the gym membership. Come clean out the bin. That would be one example. But like I said earlier, I think complex decision-making in a way to help analyze things. But now that I've met Marie, I know who I'm going to call with the CFO question. Help me run some numbers here. Because, we surround ourselves with experts, but sometimes it's really nice to have your own analysis and sets of numbers and be able to do some things internally. So I think this, for me, it's really about analysis. The idea of autonomy, we had trialed a truly autonomous tractor on our farm, and it was one of those where it took literally the first half of the day trying to get the cellular signal to lock in like a coordinate so the satellite could talk to find the tractor. Okay, half a day. Again, if the weather's going to change and you've got this stuff coming at you, you don't have half a day to mess around with that. Then the tractor would stop because it didn't have enough hydraulic downforce for the particular implement that it was pulling. Right? Now, I'm not saying that's the way everything goes. I'm just saying this trial and error really needs to be worked out before it comes to the field, before you expect people to buy into it, and you need to be able to replicate positive results again and again and again.
All right, Jack, if you in a perfect world, what farming challenge would you have AI solve for you, and what task would you automate if you could?
Boy, I got to jump on that with Jeremy about the task. Running a clipping ditches and such is the hated task. I only have one guy working for me. He hates it. Now, some of that's because you have to keep one hand on switches to be picking up and such, and that means that hand can't be going through Instagram and Facebook and such.
That's right.
That's part of the problem. I'm hating it. I do it myself. I do a lot of clipping myself, you know. And I can't say I like it. So, well, if I'm going to pick one to do, that'd be the one to do.
Yes, sir.
That's a tough one because you have, terrain and such to deal with. But some of those tasks, it's exactly what Jeremy said. Some of those tasks that we don't like to do, let's do that. And there's a few things, that I'm running that I don't mind doing, but if it's done autonomously, that gives me time to think. That gives me time to look at what's being done and maybe walk fields and look at other things. So there's a great part to that. For the AI, I've thought on this AI. One of the biggest things I would be looking at my crops growth stages. In corn, there's only a little bit you can do. In cotton, it's a whole different animal. It's a whole different world. There's so many different things going on in a cotton field that you need to monitor. And we're still, as long as I've raised cotton and as much knowledge as I have of the growth of a cotton plant, I don't have it covered. I don't have it figured out. And to make myself feel better, nobody else does either.
Yep.
It's the toughest thing. Isn't that right, Jeremy? Because cotton is a perennial crop that you're growing in an annual, basis.
Yep.
So there's so many things about it. I wish I had some AI to look at, what's going on and look at, 50 years prior to what's the best decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only thing is, the weatherman tells you you're only going to get a half an inch and you get 3 inches, or you're supposed to get 1.5 inches of really nice rain and you get nothing. You can't overcome that. That you can't do. But there's a lot of things that you could overcome with AI in your crop growth
Yep.
through the year. There's still some in corn, but it's a little easier cotton. Oh my gosh, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well,
Matt,
yes,
can I just add one too? I talked a lot about automating the projects and things like that, and then as the discussion went through, I got to thinking about AI, and it's a multiplier, and this is one thing that agriculture has that most industries don't. There's a mix of science and art, and farmers are artists more than they are scientists. We need to look at something that you can't. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2 all the time. However, if we knew so much more about our crops through AI, every time a sprayer goes across the fields, you think of the John Deere's got the See & Sprayer with the cameras across there. Tractors coming with cameras across there. If they're analyzing that crop every time, there's satellites looking at our crops every day. If we took all that information and you overlay the weather pattern that it's had, you overlay the genetics that are in each of those crops, you overlay your soil samples, your fertility program, your herbicide program, your insecticide program. There's so much information there that's being compounded. And as a grower, you kind of certain things. But like on our farm, we're growing 4 different crops on multiple sites. So we're trying to keep up with all that. So if every morning I woke up, when AI printed me a report and says, these are things that we need, this was the game plan, these are things that need your attention that you need to be thinking about. Do we need to add more nitrogen to this corn because we had 4 extra inches of rain there? Do we need to irrigate this crop? Do we need to X, Y, Z? Bringing those to your attention and letting the grower still make the calls. And then at the end of the year, taking all that information and knowing that this silo of bin has these qualities, and you can prove this silo of bin came from these fields with this quality into it, these amount of inputs into it, and finding an end user that wants those qualities. AI can do all that for us. We're just putting the whole program together. So I think it's one of those things, as you said, if we can think that big, we can do it. It's just putting the whole program together.
that's right. And so thinking big with AI, but then back to the autonomy, we've established another pattern, and I can't let it go without acknowledging it. But there was definitely a pattern that the tasks that you'd most like to see automated are those that people most don't want to do, and therefore not especially motivated to perform those tasks. And so as researchers, that's something else that we should keep in mind, that our particular research area or topic of interest, as important as it is, we shouldn't neglect the responsibility to speak with growers, understand what the pain points are in those tasks, and make sure that if we're working on automation and autonomy research, that it definitely has a use case in taking care of those tasks that you're having the most trouble with, frustration with, or difficulty completing, either yourself or those on your teams. We can't lose sight of those tasks. They may not be as exciting or impressive as maybe some of the other things that we're attempting to automate right now, but they're just as important and are immediate pain points that we can help with addressing, hopefully. To share a personal example of that, so Jeremy and Jackie, y'all have to correct me if this is wrong, but I don't think we have boll weevil issues near as bad as we used to. But whenever I was young, my father checked cotton, and I put together thousands and thousands and thousands of boll weevil traps. And I can promise you, if I had a robot or any technology that would have automated putting those traps together, that's exactly what my answer would have been if I was on the panel. I want something that's going to put these things together for me so that I can go to the swimming pool this afternoon. But I digress. All right, so we're going to dive deeper into that two-part question, and this is the one I've been saving for close to last because I'm really interested in what y'all's thoughts on this are going to be. So, theoretically, let's say that you've adopted and implemented some form of AI and automation, you're using it, but you've come to, won't call it an impasse, but you've come to a situation where that artificial intelligence has given you a recommendation, or that automation is attempting to carry out a task that you've given to it. And the recommendation from the AI or the procedure that's being carried out through an autonomous system is not being done the way that your conventional wisdom would have led you to do it if you were doing that manually. Jack, in that instance, so you've called on AI to give you feedback, and it has, and you question that feedback and aren't necessarily sure that you take it at 100% true. How would you handle that situation? Or how would you handle it if an autonomous system was doing a task that you think ought to be done differently?
Well, my gut reaction is I'm going to rely on what I've seen all my life, and I would correct it.
Yes, sir.
But what I really would like to do is do anything like what I do now. This year I told you I'm really pushing on my biologicals and changing all that up. My farm is going to be a test plot all the way across it. So with the AI, I would never put my whole farm underneath the control of it.
Sure.
We would take fields and we would take parts of fields so I can get that comparison. So my approach would be, if it says I'm wrong, then let it do it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Take part of the farm, take part of a field, half a field, and do it according to the AI, and let the AI prove to me that I am wrong, which, if you do it enough, it's going to at some point in time.
Yes, sir.
Well, that would be my approach. A little bit at a time, test it.
Yes, sir.
I like Jack's approach, but before I turn that puppy loose in the field, I'd probably reread the terms and conditions. And like, if my tractor drives off a cliff, I want to know that manufacturer is going to reimburse the tractor. Because I was watching John's presentation there, the keynote after lunch, and about different turn rows in your field. And I was thinking of one field where we need to put 11 dry dams in this one field, and thinking, well, a tractor might look at that and say there's a more efficient way maybe to go north-south, but it always seems like the fields I see in these examples are so nice and flat and level and not reality. I mean, like the two fields by University of Illinois at Champaign that are flat and level, I guess there's like all these pictures. So I started to question, are we taking in the topography? Are we taking in really all the data related to that field before we just say, okay, let's give it a try? But I agree with the idea of incrementally. I think that's right, some wisdom there to say let's try it in small ways. One thing that'd be interesting on our farm, it kind of ties back into the wish list, but this idea of soil health. Currently we don't have any soil sensors in the ground. We're kind of a water-rich state, so we're not irrigating where we're at either. But I'm much more interested in what is the actual biological activity that's taking place because of the variety of soils that we farm. I know it's going to be different. It's a different culture. Right? I'm convinced that soil is like our DNA, and it's unique in not only across a county, but within the same field. So how can we manage that better, and what kind of AI could be applied to help me understand how to manage for the best microbial activity so I can increase not only organic matter, but exchange capacity and so many other things to ultimately help it be more healthy on its own. And I would welcome the opportunity to explore that kind of question.
Yeah, I mimic your what you'd like to see happen as well. So I do have some fields that they're going on 3 years, but then I have 2 new fields that were put into production. I do have a Tuskegee University who's bringing in some sensors. I'm in a cover crop program, so I'm going to let them test on those particular fields that are not yielding profitability right now. I don't want to touch anything that's working. But, even I think back, whenever we would do a conversion, there would always be a parallel testing, so AI would be running, and then we would not just automatically turn everything over, but in order to get a baseline and also kind of see where that deviation makes sense or not. But yeah, I would turn over a test plot too and let it run, and obviously have backup, because you just don't want to end up losing your whole crop because maybe your irrigation didn't cut off or whatever,
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, the first thing, Heather, I was going to say was you take that terms and conditions and put it in ChatGPT and it'll tell you who's right. Test the AI with the AI. But, it's trust and but verify. I think it's like anything we do in our operation. We usually start 10%, 25%, 50%, then 100%. And depending on how good you feel, like I said, farmers are the artist that make the painting, but they're also the dictator that if something goes wrong, it's their call. So a lot of things that we do, you slowly implement things, because you're nothing different than SpaceX when it put a rocket into space. It took 4 blow-ups before they got it up that way. So I mean, there's going to be something that's going to go wrong every step along the way when you start a new technology. But the big thing goes back to the whoever's in charge, the puppet master, is the person that has the final call on it.
Absolutely. All right, well, we've got time, I think, for one last question, and it's going to be another 2-part question, but this one's simpler than the previous ones. So just in general, I'd ask each of you, and Jeremy, if you don't mind starting out for us, and we'll work our way back down, would you please share with us your thoughts on the future of farming in general, and what universities, land-grant universities, especially like Mississippi State, what we can do to support you?
I've always felt like technology is increasing at a rapid pace. So it's increasing rapidly and exponentially too. So we don't know what we don't know at this point in time. We can have visions of how the operations will look like, what my farm will look like when I turn it over to the next generation or whoever takes over the farm. But we don't know. It's going to be a process, but I do know it's going to change rapidly. Much more rapidly than it ever has before, and it's going to continue that process. And we're going to become more efficient. We're going to drive our costs down. We're going to have a higher quality product that is grown cheaper and much more efficient with less inputs, and we're going to be doing a better job than we ever have before. But how we're going to be doing it is just going to be fun. I think that's one of the things that excites me going forward. Is there's big tasks, whether it's regulations, if it's the end users saying we want this through technology, we can say, okay, we'll give that to you. You're our purchaser, you're our consumer, you're our customer. What you want, we'll be able to give you. And because of the technology, we'll be able to do that. Whether in the past we weren't able to have that. So I'm really, really excited for, what it's going to look like. But I'll say we will go down to a plant-by-plant monitoring and growing instead of farms, fields, acres. We'll actually be going down to a plant-by-plant decision-making. A lot of it will be automated. We'll be able to have better jobs for people that are working on farms, better career paths. We'll be much more efficient. And it's going to be like, there's always going to be weeds in the field.
Sure.
There's always going to be troubles. There's always going to be problems, but we'll be doing a better job with it.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what it's going to look like in the future because I'm kind of new to the industry. But what I do know is when I came into the industry, I wanted to obviously preserve the land, make sure that we're growing regeneratively. I'm that old-fashioned person who I don't want to use chemicals. I don't want to use pesticides. I grow everything organically, and that's sort of my space in agriculture. But as far as AI can be used to make that happen, I'm all on board for it. I think the big thing for me is farmers are for-profit businesses. So when I typically engage with some of the projects, take into account the business perspective. how that farm is making profit and running their business definitely needs to be taken into account when projects are proposed from institutions to come and do research. It really should not interfere with a farmer's ability to make profit, and I'll speak specifically to these kinds of things. I know a lot of times timing is the issue. A project is slated, but maybe, it needs to happen with a certain time frame in order for, planting or whatever. And sometimes it seems like we're out of sync between what the farmer needs to run his business versus what some of these research projects are looking to do. So I think there needs to be a little bit more collaboration, and not just about the timing, but the timing as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, one of the research projects we were involved, well, side note, because of precision agriculture, our farm, which is 2 hours away from the land grant and 2 hours away from southern Illinois at Carbondale and 2 hours away from Illinois, you get the idea. Because of precision ag, we were able to then participate in some research. So that's cool. But in their research budget, I thought it was a great idea that they had built in some remuneration to the farmer, saying, we recognize you could experience some yield loss. So you share your 5-year average on this particular crop, and then if we fall short of that, you get remunerated, right? So that's just part of it. Now, did it cover the inconvenience part in it? No. There was not an inconvenience fee, so consider that in the next NSF grant you're applying for.
Yep.
But in terms of the role of public research, to me it is absolutely critical. We as a country are getting outspent by Brazil and China. And have been for several years, and in India too. And it seems that it is ultimately that public exchange of ideas and the combination of basic and use-inspired research that has been able to propel us forward, rather than just giving it all over to private companies who will keep it on a shelf until the time is right for their profit. But I think that Connie made the excellent point this morning, which is, but within public research, please do a better job of collaborating. We want everybody to get your degree. We want you to succeed. But try to collaborate so that it's not just replicating what somebody else did just to get published, but actually advancing new information and innovations. And I don't know enough about the funding structure, because it just seems like it's so rigid, the way sometimes you have to function and the way you report and basically get audited on how you spend money. So it's somewhat unfortunate that, you've got to pay salaries and labor and overhead, but if you could document more in kind, well, they have the tool we need. They have that robotic arm that's really going to make unwrapping plastic a lot easier. How can we do that? Right, and knowing what that is, and maybe there are platforms where you all have that up there, and you can just look across institutions like, oh my gosh, they have a robotic arm. Can we use that? I don't know, but that kind of sharing, use of AI to help you search fast and find out who has what, that'd be cool.
Yes, absolutely. Jack, you get the last word. Tell us what you think about the future and how we can help.
So, I have to think about, what did I think when in 1972, when first time I got on a tractor with a planter, that my dad gave me that job, I was 15 years old. That was with a 4020, which everybody knows what a John Deere 4020 is, And then it wasn't even a John Deere Maximerge, it was an international planter that had some years on it. Yep. Planting like I did then, if something plugged on the planter and you went to reload, and this was soybeans, so you were running a lot of seed out, you go back and one of those boxes is still full. It's like, ooh, I need that jar to put those words in, So, a lot of one-row planters, you go back and you shut all the other ones off, and, the technology I had, it was nothing back then. It was just all mechanical, and you had no idea. I think Jeremy mentioned, you had no idea what you were doing out there. And then fast forward to where we are now, and I look at the huge, huge jump in technology that I have in both tractors and comfort. When I can hit that auto steer button, and then I can look at my screens and I look at what I'm doing instead of trying to stay exactly on my row, exactly where I'm supposed to be. The comfort at the end of the day, and Jeremy mentioned that too, your days are so much better. Yep. So look at the change from then till now, and then with AI and what's going on now and what people have learned, oh my gosh, the next 35, 40, 50 years, well, let's just say the next 20 years, how much gain, how much change will we have?
Yep.
You know, it's just, there's no limit to it,
Absolutely.
no limit at all.
So on that comfort note, though, my husband literally sat at the end of the row and watched one of our employees. He had turned and was going down a mile. Okay, this field's actually a mile long. And he just sat and watched him as the implement was not in the ground for the entire mile. Didn't call him on the radio, didn't call him on the phone, just seeing if he realized he did not have the implement in the ground until he got to the end. So there's still room for operator error and improvement in
Of
this. And
course.
AI could be like, beep, beep, beep. You know?
Yep. Well, I could stay up here and ask y'all questions all day, but I think we've exhausted our time, and we sincerely appreciate your time and want to wish you a very safe and successful growing season. And I'll ask the audience to help me please thank our panelists.